So, even though it's been a while, I've kind of been thinking about my Skylanders review series, and as I was pondering to myself on what I should do with it, I decided to take a look at all my figures and see who should get reviewed next. And after digging through the pile for a little bit, I would find a few contenders, many of them being swappers, since I actually like a lot of them. But those reviews are going to be extremely long and time intensive if I ever do them. This is mainly because I need to factor in how these moves could mix with other Skylanders and the fact that they technically have two movesets. So I decided it'd be best if I did something a little simpler. And that would eventually lead me to Smolderdash. Now, Smolderdash as a Skylander has been a Skylander that I have always regarded as a high tier one, and because of that, I've played her in nearly every single Skylanders game I own, those being Swap Force, Trap Team, and Superchargers. But as I've used her in these games, I've grown to notice a lot of different aspects of her skill tree and how it interacts with her gimmick as a character, and how interesting it is as a whole. So I decided to push her to her limits in not only her home turf, but Skylanders, Trap Team, and Superchargers as well, and my findings were rather, interesting, to say the least. Like nearly every Skylander in this series, she has some broken aspects to her, and one of those is so devious that even without her gimmick, it is horrifically strong. So that's the plan for today. We're going to review Smolderdash's moveset and see how good, interesting, and even fun this Skylander is. So with that said and done, let's get going.
Blaze of glory.
Now, like we usually do, before we can actually hop into Smolderdash's moveset, we first need to talk about her development history, and like most Skylanders, it usually comes down to concept art. But unlike most concept art, most of Smolderdash's is far better than what we actually got. Small tangent here, but for most Skylanders, you can actually understand why that Skylander's concept art wasn't used. It usually comes down to the final design being a culmination of the previous designs, or being far better than the other designs. I mean, have you seen what Wind Up originally was? Like, I could barely understand how Wind Up as a character would work with this design. But for Smolderdash, her concept art gives her far more of a presence than her normal look, even with that one upgrade we'll get to later. Heck, even her late design you can find in the book just works so well with her whole theme. Like, damn, they should have just made this her secondary form or used that design for her Lightcore variant. I mean, I know it wouldn't be game accurate, but still, you gotta admit that it would look cool. But with that being said, it's about time that we discuss her moveset before I fall down the rabbit hole of redesigning this character. Like, she even had a face in her concept art. You could have made a cool idle animation with that. Smolderdash is a Skylander of the fire element and starts with a base health of 280 and has a max health of 560, without hats or magical items. And she starts out with 2 attacks, her primary being a close range whip attack, and her secondary causing her to shoot a sunball. Now, this ball of fire is actually more complex than you think since it's rather slow, but you can manually detonate it by pressing the same button. But it can detonate on its own after a certain period of time or running into a wall. So with that, let's actually get into the stuff that you can buy, and trust me, this is where things are going to get really complex really quickly, starting with her first upgrade, Eclipse. By pressing the third attack button, that being Y or triangle for console players, Smolderdash will become supercharged for a short period of time, which in turn alters her entire moveset drastically. For her primary, she gains a second whip, and because of it, has a much faster attack speed than usual, and for her secondary, it turns into a black hole. Yes, dear viewer, you did not mishear me, and because of that, when it detonates, instead of just knocking enemies away, it will also pull them towards its center. TLDR, you're not only knocking enemies into the air and damaging them, but the explosion pulls them back in, and if you're positioning yourself correctly, Smolderdash will be waiting there with 2 whips. Getting back to her upgrade, Sunrise allows you to hold down the primary attack button to charge up a sun attack, and when you release it, Smolderdash will jump out of frame before slamming a sun back down on her position to damage everything caught in the blast. And probably as a surprise to nobody, her other 2 upgrades are just stat upgrades. This one increases the damage of her whips, and this one increases her movement speed. Which brings us to her 2 paths, Sunforged and Sunforger. Starting with Sunforger, the first upgrade, Supergiant, allows her to charge her secondary attack into a bigger sun, which works the same way as the first, but it's just bigger and stronger with a wider damage radius. The second upgrade is another basic stat increase in the form of a higher critical chance, and her final upgrade is where things get a little more complex again in the form of Sun Splitter. Instead of exploding when struck like it usually did, if you bought Sun Splitter, you can strike a normal sun and increase its speed, but for a Supergiant, it actually just splits it into 3 suns. And since we're done here, let's get into Sunforged, because this is where things get utterly apocalyptic. Her first upgrade, Solar Blast, upgrades Sunrise by causing her to shoot out 5 suns after she slams into the ground. And if you thought that was overkill, you could combo this with your Eclipse form and all the suns will become black holes. The next upgrade, Sunny Armor, is just another stat upgrade again, this time for armor. And Sun's Core allows her to strike her suns and give herself a flaming aura that damages any enemies that touch it. I know that picking paths is usually debatable for which one's better, and it usually comes down to which one fits your playstyle, but for this one, it's not even negotiable. Sunforged is so apocalyptically strong and powerful on its own with that one upgrade without Eclipse making it even stronger. And finally, her Soul Gem upgrade, Smolderdash, allows her to dash in her Eclipse form by pressing the third attack button. But even though she seems pretty good, there's a couple of things that bring her down a little bit, the first of which being enemies that can't be stunned. Tankier enemies have always been somewhat of an issue for Skylanders because, well, they need to have a challenge every once in a while and test the player, but when it comes to Smolderdash, she seems to especially struggle since a lot of her moves rely on stunning since her main attack feels rather weak, at least to me. Combo this with the fact that she's pretty slow until you get an upgrade that's exclusive to her Eclipse form, the one that can run out and has a cooldown, it's way harder to dodge attacks outside of jumping. But that all doesn't really matter when you can nuke your opponent with the power of the sun. But for some weird reason, you can actually get hit during this attack. And I'm not just talking about getting hit like when you're about to jump into the air, I mean while your character is off screen in the air. Now, I was originally under the impression that once you're airborne, you can't take any damage like Spyrise, meaning that it could be a good way to dodge damage while dishing out damage of your own. But for some reason, that doesn't seem to be the case. Now, to be completely fair, the only place that I really experienced this was in Skylander's Trap Team. But still, this is pretty damn unfair since while you're in the air, you can't do anything until you come back down. But speaking of the other games, how much does she differentiate from her original appearance? Interestingly enough, outside of that one issue discussed earlier, she's actually way better in Skylander's Trap Team in my eyes. It's mostly due to the fact that she doesn't have that weird delay whenever she strikes an enemy. Her movements just feel a lot more fluid in that game, and yes, her knockback ability is nerfed significantly, at least compared to how it functioned in SWAT Force, but it still does something and she's still pretty fun. But in Superchargers, however, that attack delay comes back with a vengeance, and it's to the point where she can just freeze in place depending on what you are hitting, and it is very annoying. But to give that game some credit, it does allow you to hit an enemy multiple times with one strike, so there is at least some redeeming qualities to that. But to wrap things up, Smolderdash as a Skylander is actually a really good one, and even though she starts out rather weak without her Eclipse form, she can become monstrous at the end of the day thanks to her Eclipse form and Solar Blast making her dish out damage on an unhinged scale no matter the form. But with all that being said, I would like to thank you all for watching. Like always, hit the subscribe button if you enjoy content like this, share this around so I can grow the channel, leave some comments down below to make the algorithm happy, check out Return to Skylands, its Discord, and a bunch of other stuff that I do down in the description below, and I will see you all in the next one.